Construction industry professionals are confronted with a brave new world. As we reopen post-pandemic, we are witnessing serious skills shortage and global supply chain issues. Many large government agencies are losing up to a third of their experienced personnel due to retirement. Our industry is going through serious resource challenges. The traditional design bid build is characterized by the cheapest price versus the right price if you add up all those change orders. A pervasive command and control culture pits one provider against the other. Owners, engineers, and contractors have competing agendas as their profit margins dwindle and skepticism and mistrust builds up. When low-bid mentality drives entire project delivery system, there is not much room for innovation and value generation. Having its roots in the industrial space, design build is a collaborative, team-based, provides optimized solution. This project delivery method is finally gaining traction in the public domain. In today's podcast, we shall talk about how design build procurement process is the right choice for public construction, types of design build, and what is design build. We have two very knowledgeable guests, Christine Mizioch and Rod Schaffert. Hi, this is Abul Islam. Welcome to my podcast, Bridging Connections. I'd like to welcome you, Christine and Rod, and I'd like to quickly read out your bio first before we get into talks and question answer. So here's Christine. Christine is Vice President at AI Engineers and the lead operations managers in our Boston office, where she oversees all business development, client relations in Massachusetts and New England. Christine is also in the board of the DBIA New England Design Build Institute of America and has been previously involved with design build projects. Rod Schaffert is Vice President and Project Executive at Bowdoin Construction in Westborough, Massachusetts. He's the past president of DBIA New England and is currently the membership chair. He is also an adjunct professor at his alma mater, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and serves on the Westborough Economic Development Commission. Welcome, Christine and Rod.
Thank you, Abul.
All right. So let's go with the first round of question. And it's the starting volley, let me say, about the true value of design build projects. How do you balance this cost, time, quality, and why is it a better choice than our traditional design bid build? I'd like to go with any one of you.
Sure. So design build is a collaborative effort. It brings together the owner and the designer and the contractor to work simultaneously on a project to try to come up with the best solution. Although the owners most of the time give some preliminary designs in their solicitation document, the process in and of itself provides for innovation, opportunities for contractors to utilize their skill sets, means, and methods to try to drive the price to be the best and most competitive price, while also engaging with the engineer to provide the most innovative solution. So in that collaborative effort, it brings a lot of value to not only to the project, but to the owner who gets the opportunity to take advantage of some different types of projects or different types of alternatives that may create a better project in the end at a better price.
Very good.
Well, thank you again for inviting me, because design build is something I really feel passionate about, and I've been doing it for my whole career. I started out with an integrated construction company and now lead Bowdoin's design build group. I come from a little bit different world in terms of public versus private. Most of our work is private. It's vertical construction. And as you mentioned, that's really where design build started and has come from. So the lessons I've learned from that are, as Christine said, it's the collaborative nature of the project and the team working together for the best value for the owner. And I'd also like to point out that it's the owner plays a very big part in the design build approach too. And we're going to talk a little bit about different types of design build. But I used to have a boss that worked for me, and he said when you went into a project meeting and you couldn't tell who the owner, the architect, and the builder were, all were working for the best goals of the project, then you have a true team. So how does design build and that delivery system allow that to happen? We'll talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I just also would like to mention that you have a very strong background in the vertical space, and that's exactly where design build delivery system has its success. When you have a private owner with a large industrial project, and he has experience with a team of architect, engineers, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, all the players, and it is a tried and tested team. Nothing beats that for your next project, and that the building of that trust and alignment, is so critical. The distinct difference is that the public owners, that we have a lot of experience with public owners, majority of our work with DOTs, government agencies, major work, and they are just beginning to understand the virtues of this collaborative effort. And we need to have more success stories of team building. And that's the difficult part. How do you start with team A, contractor 1, B2, subcontractor 2, engineer 2, one team, one successful project, the next successful project, and you are in the business. This thing has been missing, because you're starting with the program with many public agencies. Actually, 10, 15 years ago, the public procurement laws were not in favor of design build. So legislature had to act to make design build kosher. That's not too long ago in the realm of public construction, but it has been there for 12, 10, 15 years. Now many public agencies, DOTs, have no problem with design build legally. But what is the reality? So I'd like you guys to, again, talk about the space that the projects that many public agencies have been successful, and what else could be done by all of us in the private industry, consultants, contractors, and the owners with regard to getting more projects into design build, especially given the bipartisan infrastructure money, which will essentially, rule of thumb, will increase the construction budget to 50% more in the next 5 years than we had historically any state. What could be done to put more projects into design build, and what are the pitfalls and what are the opportunities to really embrace by public agencies? Why don't you go about?
I think the biggest issue that's facing the use of this delivery method is the risk. So contractors have a certain amount of risk that is tolerable to them. Designers have a certain amount of risk that is tolerable to them. Not every project is a good candidate for design build. The theory is it's faster, better, cheaper, but you don't want to give on quality. You don't want to give on things that are important to the client. But in terms of the risk and being able to price that risk early before the design is complete sometimes can be very challenging, both for the owner but also for the partners that are potentially trying to pursue some of these projects. So there's a impetus in the industry about working with the owners early on in projects before they get into the solicitation phase to identify what areas of risk are more manageable perhaps by the owner than by simply putting it into the design build solicitation and having that just become part of a project. That collaborative effort early on with the owner to identify those risk areas will result in a better price. And it will result in a better product, and it will help with innovation, and it will help to tailor the areas where the design build teams know that they can excel with certain types of maybe different things that owners may not have experienced in the past, but understanding that the risk is more manageable if it's shared correctly. Again, not every project is going to be a great candidate for design build, and every owner learns lessons from past projects, as I did when I was at MassDOT Highway. I started with the first design build project with the early pilot legislation in the late 90s, and then grew the program from there. And every project I did led to some lessons that I would change some language, or I would change some requirements, or I would have more open discussions about maybe items that in the past we may have given to the contractor and designer to try to manage in the project, where we really felt that if we took ownership of this, we could capitalize on a better pricing structure that would be beneficial to all of us.
Very good. Rod, you have any comment?
I do. So where I might disagree with Christine a little bit, which is always good, is I really think design build can be used just about on any project. But there's a caveat to that. The way that the public domain has typically done design build is developing a set of bridging documents and ask for a final price based on the contractor and designer finishing the design and putting together the proposal. DBIA New England has really been pushing for a different kind of design build, which is referred to as progressive design build. And this is really what's done most often in the private industry, that the owner selects the team, the design build team, early on in the process to develop the project. They're selected based on a fee and qualifications and some ideas on how they would approach the project, but they aren't asked to give a final price when they're selected. It's based on their qualifications, a fee proposal based on maybe some design and their fee to manage the project, but the final price is established with the owner as they go along. Now, a lot of times the owner will have a budget in mind, and then that's the real beauty of design build. You can design to the budget. And this has been very successful in the private world. DBIA New England has been promoting this and trying to get more public owners to think about doing it this way. I think the advantage of that also is the speed that projects can be brought forward. Instead of going through with this bridging design where you hire somebody that's not going to eventually design the project, you're working with the team right up front from the very beginning. And I think, as you stated, as the infrastructure monies become available, getting projects through the design faster is one of the key aspects, and progressive design build allows that to happen.
I think the progressive design build is progressing toward the ultimate project. So as Rod said, you start out with a scope, you start out with some of the requirements that the owner would want, and then you get a fee for the starting of the design. And there are a number of different factors in there that are attractive to an owner. If they can't come to consensus on a guaranteed maximum price, there's an off-ramp, and the owner can choose to retain the designer independent of the design build team. And maybe they go for a traditional design build as a result of that. Maybe they go to a design bid build. But it has some different opportunities that allow that progressing toward the ultimate goal that everybody has in mind. With respect to the bridging documents, that's something else in the industry that has come up as an issue. It's very expensive to pursue a design build project. And although there are stipends in the public domain for unsuccessful firms, the stipends don't cover the amount of cost that goes into the engineering and the documents necessary to support pursuing that particular solicitation. So when there are not bridging documents, and you have the opportunity to work hand in hand with the owner to develop the scope and then develop the price together, that collaborative effort brings design build to another level and allows a lot more integration, allows for a lot more opportunities for innovation, but it also improves tremendously the collaboration amongst all the team partners. It is something that is probably required to make some changes to individual legislative pieces that currently cover design build, but several states have engaged in that, and DBIA New England is, again, promoting that. There's training classes that are available. There are a lot of opportunities for owners to get an understanding about how that could best benefit an alternative delivery program for them.
Good. Now, I'd like to, with our AI engineers' experience in design build for the last several years has been generally good in the New York City area marketplace and, large clients. Some of the owners have a very far-sighted approach with regard to balancing this, qualification-based technical proposal and independently scoring all the 3 team members just on the technical proposal and scoring them by their panel. And then going to, once they have a scoring all determined for all of the three players, three teams with their engineers, contractors. They will go and open up the folder for their cost proposal, and then just kind of mishmash a kind of their scoring system, and then come up with the best valued team. So what and some owners have to. The public procurement laws are there. The legal things about selecting an entity on a cost is important. So they simply, just like you mentioned about the off-ramp and all that, the public owners have not yet experimented with that, although it is a good thing to do that one, that if the negotiation doesn't happen into construction, you can hold on to the design and so on and so forth. Again, due to overly legalistic public procurement laws from agency to agency, from state to state. What is your comment with regard to this technical proposal versus cost proposal by different agencies, and what is the right approach? Because we're talking about progressive design build, where a lot of emphasis is given on the qualifications, QPS, just like we do independently consultant or architect selection based on purely qualification, experience, expertise, nothing to do with cost. What do you think about the balancing act between technical proposal scoring system and the cost proposal?
Well, many states use QBS for the initial shortlist. So qualifications packages will be submitted by firms, teams that are interested in that particular pursuit. That shortlist results in a request for proposals where the technical proposal and the price are submitted separately. Depending on state to state, the selection criteria can be different. Some states do it very simplistically, price divided by score. Some use a user cost. Maybe it's a complicated traffic area, so they'll have a user cost associated with a number of days bid by the contract. So depending on the agency that's pursuing the solicitation, that selection criteria can be different. Price is definitely a factor, especially with public agencies looking to get maximize what they can get for their dollars. But every state has to look at what is important to them and understanding how they come up with that best value so that the industry knows going into a particular solicitation what the expectations are for what they are going to submit. Private side is probably a little bit different, Rod?
Much different. Much different. I think for all the reasons we've talked about, the private side has really not used that model in terms of the bridging documents because of the issues. And I think we talked a little bit about it earlier. The cost for the design people to compete to put together a set of documents and the expectations of what the contractors are in terms of what they're getting for those documents that get submitted with their proposals. That's where we're really seeing the conflict in the design build industry and some of the issues that we're doing. So the private industry has really pushed towards the progressive design, which I realize will require some legislation changes in some of our neighboring states here. But unfortunately, the New England area is still behind the times relative to this. So, we look at what's happening at the West Coast, and Christine and I go, oh my goodness, why can't we do this? So, I think there's great opportunities as people learn more about what this means, which is part of what DBIA New England wants to do, is help educate, the public owners. And they've been very receptive, I have to say. We hosted 10 of them at our last class, and there was it's like, how do we get enough people behind this to start promoting this? Because I think that's where the industry is headed.
So let's talk about, you mentioned about the complex project or moderately complex project and simple projects, and things change. Long lead items for major highway bridge replacement project, environmental assessment, impact statements, and all those big stuff. Time-related stuff before we can go into the design. So there are highly complex projects, time-driven, prolonged. You cannot escape those things because of so many government agencies are involved in the permit process before a major project becomes a reality. So that's a complex project. I always think, having spent so much time in the world of highway, bridge, design, small projects, big bridge, and all that, highway safety. The DOTs every year would bring a ton, dozens, and sometimes 24 projects of highway safety, guardrail improvement, paving, and so on and so forth. Why can't we not just use a it's a conceptual design, which the DOTs do, and then, put a little time, and then they go into the bidding documents and so on and so forth. So that's a very simpler project, but it has value and scale, because when you add all these tons of pavement and miles of highway, the project size gets bigger. However, it's a simpler project than a complex new interchange and bridge project too. So the percentage of design completion, what is the right percentage? And where do you say 30%, or 40% completion, and the consulting engineer does not get the job, or the team does not get the job? It's a lost cause for him. And I mean, there is, in many cases, there is the payment from, stipend and all, but that's not much, So some people also think that if you put the percentage of design at 30% and above, it takes away the concept of the team, the design build team, with very preliminary concept design plans. So my question is that what is the right percentage of design completion to be a truly design build project where innovation is there, where creativity of team A, team B, or team C are on an individual basis can be seen of what the owner has described his main objective for the project goal is?
I think if you've asked a cross-section of people of that in the industry, you'd get a wide variety of answers. Some people are a fan of 30% because they feel like that's what the owner is looking for. So the risk may be less if that's what the expectation is. Others would like to see more of a cartoon drawing and say, let us have at it. So there's two ways to go about it, performance-based or prescriptive. If you are having a complex area, maybe you have a lot of stakeholders, maybe there's some significant environmental concerns, maybe you have a Coast Guard permit or something that you just can't vary from, then you're going to be very prescriptive in your language in your bidding document. And that's going to, limit innovation to a certain degree, as long as the contracting and design teams are aware that there are some things it's a hard pass for changing. Then there's performance-based, where you may have a particular project. I did one in the past where we were trying to accommodate double stacking on a CSX rail line. So we needed a definitive amount of clearance underneath the bridge. That was the criteria. I need to get this clearance. And you need to make sure that you're complying with the bridge manual and the ASHTO manual. So, but, give us your best shot at what the project is going to look like. So I think the owners, need to take a little bit of a look at maybe what is best for an individual project. Some of those projects maybe have a little bit more design, some may have a little less. The issue sometimes comes in with when there's some broad language that the owners use that suggests that the information in the bidding document is only for informational purposes. That's another risk element. If you're given a design at 30%, but you can't rely on certain features of it without going and having to do your own due diligence, perhaps survey or borings, your latent field conditions are a big issue that, hamper any project. But the more design that the owner gives, the less innovation that the teams might actually come back with if they believe that the owner is locked into certain parameters that cannot change. So I think the owners really need to take a look at, what the project outcomes are intended to be and let the teams get there. Most of the states that use this or agencies that use this have an alternative technical concepts process that involve one-to-one meetings with the teams where they can talk about some of the ideas and share some of the concerns that may resonate from the owners on a particular item that the contracting team may think is great, but the owner is a little bit wary of maybe they haven't used it in the past, or maybe there's a complicating factor with another stakeholder. But the more collaboration that can be done early on, I think the owners will see that there's a benefit in actually providing less design in a bidding document than more design. Private sector is probably, again, different.
Yeah, well, I think Christine, when in your opening remarks, talked about risk. And I think in trying to identify the percentage of documents you need, it's about identifying the risks. Risks cost money. So the better you can define the project and manage that risk, the less contingency, if you will, the bidders have to put. And so I think really thinking about what the major risks are on the projects and identifying how to narrow that down as best you can Each project is different, and I think each project has to look at it. I remember one presentation I heard. It was actually for the Tappan Zee Bridge project when they were talking about that, and they were talking about managing risk, and we got to go through this Monte Carlo analysis. And I thought, holy cow, this is serious stuff. Probabilities in terms of what happens. I mean, that's the ultimate level. We don't usually see that level of analysis on our projects, but that really it's all about risk.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the promotion of design build in the public agencies, and promotion of the culture among the players, general contractors, not just big contractors, mega contractors who have the resources, have done a whole bunch of design build. You see that all the time in the ENR and the publications. But at the mid-level, at the mid-contractor level, mid-consultant level, how can the state agencies, the governments, the DOTs can promote an environment that design build is fostered, between the various players, given the fact that the rank and file general contractors, especially in New England, are not experienced. So they just tend to view their consultant, as just another one of their subcontractors, and they can, negotiate, extract a price and all that stuff in the same way that they would do with any supplier, subcontractor. Historically, without the design build, engineers are not going to be treated like that. But the contract expect that treatment. And again, some design builds do not really necessarily bring that relationship between the general contractor and consulting engineer. What can an owner do to promote better synergy between players based on one pilot project with the mid-sized firm and second one and the third one and so on and so forth? Is a unit, formation of a unit. And it's challenging too, given that our government agencies are shedding people, not adding people, that in the future, that they could have a design build unit, or through the Design Build Institute of America, help their existing staff to certify them into all of those categories, associate, design build. So they have a strong design build component within their agencies and kind of oversee this. They can be aware of where there's a synergy, where there's not a synergy between mid-sized contractors and mid-sized engineers. What is your thought on that, each of you?
I think owners have generally done a pretty good job in understanding that when they decide to dip their toes into the design build world, or alternative delivery for that matter, that it's going to require some sort of a culture change internally. Government agencies have protocols, they have standard operating procedures, and it's all done in the similar fashion. Design bid build has always been done the same way. Design build requires that people think about things a little bit differently, and having a shop internal at an agency that oversees design build projects and that trains people to understand what those differences are is a critical component to the success of a program. That's not to say if you don't have one, your program won't be successful, but it's about owners understanding what the differences are and making sure that communication is open, not only within the agency, but also with the teams that are bidding. So for teaming between consultants and contractors, clarity, collaboration, communication, the 3 C's, understanding what each other's needs are, what each other's expectations are, and how you talk to each other. And by doing that, you will automatically have more of an engagement, more of a collaborative effort. And the owners can definitely help with that. Owners that are new to design build or alternative delivery, they'll have growing pains, just like the industry's having growing pains. You mentioned contractors that would be new to this. They have to learn a little bit different. Us as consultants, we have to learn a little bit different. The jobs are run in an extremely different format. They have to be very timely, paying attention to schedule, paying attention to costs. All of that, it comes to at a different level when you're doing a design build job. So the more the owners can take advantage of educational opportunities and having that open dialogue with the industry, whether it's consultants or contractors, talking about what the issues are, talking about risk, talking about schedule management, talking about, cost controls, innovation, alternatives. All of those things need to be at the forefront when you do a project, not waiting until the project is trying to be implemented. So the more early engagement that they can have, that was beneficial to the projects. That's on the public side. Private?
You want to add anything?
No, I think they're very similar, and as you said, it all comes down to culture, and I think it's really up to the owner to help model that. I was fortunate in my career that when I first started, I worked with an integrated design build firm. In the fact we had architects, engineers, and contractors all working. It was all one company. So when you're pointing at the architect and the engineer, you're pointing at yourself. So it's when you have that mindset that we're all one team and we're all working for the benefit of the project, I mean, the industry has gotten so siloed, and that's what DBIA is trying to do, is break down those silos. I mean, if you go back in history and you think about the cathedrals, they were done by master builders. They weren't done by architects and engineers. Somewhere this industry got a little bit lost, and it's great to see the design build helping to bring it back together.
Yes, siloed is that's the word. Profits getting slimmer and slimmer. For any owner, large public owner, if their big project guys, contractors, or their profit is going down and down, that's not good news for anybody, including them. So and that happens because of the traditional.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
Yes.
But sometimes design build teams really hit it out of the park with an alternative that the owner may not have thought about. And that's the beauty of the process, is that the owner has an engineer that does maybe 20%, 25% design for a bidding document, but allows the teams to come up with some different types of alternatives. And I've seen contracting design teams come in with stuff that we never even contemplated. But because they've had experience with doing maybe complicated traffic management or stakeholder engagement, they have some ideas that they can bring to the table, and owners can really capitalize on that. So that process that allows for that innovation is really critical to getting good results from the owner's perspective.
I think it's, you said it right, it's a culture, that the way I have worked almost 38 to 39 years myself with many fantastic people, smart engineers, capable people, is a prescriptive solution, project manager, about his superiors, assistant project manager, senior engineer, principal at the DOTs, at the consultants, a very prescriptive solution. And to see that you give a 10 or 15% design build to a general contractor and then let him decide what is in the best interest of the contractor and engineer is a little harder on an individual who has been lifelong trained with the procedure, policies, set procedures, and he or she still has a lot of authority at the public agency. How do you change that culture? That's the tough part. That unless and until there is a promoter within the agency, or training program, and I'm sure that Design Build Institute can add tremendous value with regard to educating, training them, with regard to all of the new culture that they all have to adapt to make design build successful. That is one thought I always had. We are all human beings. What we did 20 years ago, we just simply can't change it overnight. It takes time for all of us, individually and collectively. The one last thought, and this is about flexibility and agility, and flexibility and agility, everybody agrees, is the hallmark of successful organization in today's time. And today's time is unpredictable, uncertain, disruptive. So you can't be fixed with it. So you have to be flexible for business, for a project, and also to attract the younger generation into our profession. Historically, it has been a challenge for the construction industry that why smart young professionals will not gravitate and stay long-term in our industry, consultant, contractor, architect, all of those things, including government engineers and the DOTs that hire all these smart engineers. What we need to do to promote this agility, and adaptability in our construction process? And how can, in your opinion, design build promote that? Because it always creates innovation, better ways of doing things as a team, and create more use of new technology. And that's the new technology. That if the construction industry, I'm sure all of you have read that McKinsey paper 2017 about what ails the construction industry. It's a volume that still you can find in McKinsey Global Institute. I read that 6 years ago, and they have pinpointed all the issues and the problems. The solution is, what is the solution? Is embracing the technology, attracting the younger generation. We haven't done a great job, entire industry, as opposed to other industries, IT industry, for example, or new technology and all that stuff. What can we do? How can design build, promote that a little bit, this agility, in our culture?
I think design build teams have to be agile by nature. There's a lot of things that happen on a design build project. They move very quickly once they get implemented. So the teams need to work together, and they need to be flexible enough to understand each other's needs that are changing rapidly. Contractors may see something that, maybe they get halfway through a particular element on a project and they see something that needs to be changed because they could make it better, they could be done quicker, they could have a huge improvement to the schedule. So the designers then become necessary and need to be flexible to be able to kind of shift on the fly. So that agility kind of gets built into the process in and of itself. Younger people, I totally agree with you. They like to work on exciting things. They like to see different things. They like to take advantage of the technology. They like to see how they can utilize, these new and improved tools to make the jobs more efficient and make the work more productive. Engaging them is the hard part. They're not graduating as many civil, structural, mechanical engineers as they did in the past. So the industry is struggling to find younger people to get excited about what it is that we do and how we do it. I think design build lends a different way of getting them engaged in the work, and they can see the benefits of the agility and the flexibility that it offers to the process, and allow the project to move along in a way that is not the same in the past, where you see maybe a construction job that lasts 10 years. Some of these projects go very, very rapidly, and that's great way for young people to see a lot of different types of work. So getting them educated and getting firms to, talk about design build and talk about alternative delivery and what it brings to the industry, I think will naturally have people be engaged in it if they understand that those opportunities are there, and that the work is a lot different. The culture is different. The way that the jobs are implemented are far different than your traditional projects. And I think that will lend itself to bringing more people and having them more excited about working on some of these projects.
The industry is changing, the world is changing. Civil engineers are a big part of that. I mean, it used to be faster, better, cheaper, right? Now we have other issues. Big one, climate change, sustainability. I mean, absolutely. Young kids are rallying around sustainability, and it's a big part in how we design and build our buildings. If you look at the construction industry and the waste and the energy that's used in that, I think our younger generation is the one that's going to really help us with sustainability and climate change, and they're ready to do that. I just started 2 weeks ago teaching my first class at Worcester Polytech as an adjunct professor, and I was told I'd have 25. There's 55 people in the students. We had to turn people away, and more than half of them are women. They're excited about it, and which gets me excited about it. So I think design build, having a collaborative effort. I mean, what the young people don't want to do is go bang their heads against each other with conflict. They want to work collaboratively. They work on projects. They want to be able to come up with creative solutions. I think if we can tell them that the industry is changing, it's no longer this headbutting that we've been doing for many years, that we're going to work collaboratively on projects and do great things. I mean, we got to get excited about it. First thing I did when I walked into my class, I thought, we need to think about aspirational goals. It's not just, we're going to meet the budget, we're going to meet the schedule, we're going to have good quality. We got to think more beyond that. And I get excited. The progressive class we took at DBIA, they talked about getting the team together at the beginning of the project and talk, what are the aspirational goals? I'm like, holy cow, this is more than I learned when I went to school. Let's talk about these things. Let's get excited. So I think that's what's going to happen. And as more of us who have been in the industry can get our mindset changed, I think that'll help. I was really excited a few weeks ago. DBIA New England promoted a class, and I wasn't even sure about it. It was called Courageous Leadership. And it's all about the soft skills, what we bring to the table as leaders. And leaders aren't all the way they used to be. In terms, you talked about command and control. There's more than one type to lead a project, and it's not always command and control. So I think there's some good things happening. There's some great training classes. DBIA New England is really trying to promote that, get involved. One of the things we're doing, I actually have a call with Lisa Washington, the head of DBIA, tomorrow to talk about student chapters and how we can get our universities more involved. But it's out there. We just we got to stop saying we can't do and start saying we can do.
And figuring out how to do.
There you go. There you go.
Absolutely. You said it very well, Rod, and about the sustainability, resiliency, and more importantly, DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. As we have gotten all these monies, not just the transportation fund, but broadband and all that, the federal monies, one of the objectives is, and a lot of people are working very hard across the country, region that I know of, to promote these DEI with regard to the underserved communities, especially communities that are in the close to water, sea, Boston, New York City, and all that, and have much less per capita income for that locality and region. So once a flood happens, they lose everything. They don't have a huge bank balance with regard to that they can tap on to that one. They essentially, many of them live from paycheck to paycheck. So that equity in creating better transportation infrastructure, better infrastructure altogether, and keeping that the socioeconomic conditions and the society that we have evolved into, the real society, all of the people, women, minorities, all people, is very much a part of the same objective of agility and flexibility. We can't truly be agile and flexible if it is not inclusive, if it is not equitable with regard to various groups, regions, economic divide that we have in our big cities and our communities. We need to keep that in mind and include everybody. And that is already happening.
It is, yes. And especially in our colleges, too. I'm the chairperson for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for UMass Lowell. We're bringing in a lot of different topics, different speakers, and getting people trying to get more engaged in becoming STEM-related careers and getting people, they are excited about the climate change. They are excited about becoming part of the solution. And I think that alternative delivery brings them into that solutions with allowing that innovation by the owners and getting these young people to give some ideas and give some suggestions about, how best to manage some of the, crazy things that are happening in our world right now. Bringing them in and having them talk about, social equity, what are the concerns there? How do we spend our transportation dollars and how do we spend them effectively? It's a big part of the conversation.
I'd like to add one more thing to that. And it actually happened at our class last night. We had a modular builder give a presentation, and you were going to see that too. More things being done off-site as opposed onto construction sites with technology. But one of the things that he said is, the trades are a big issue in our industry as well. How do we get more people interested, excited about the trades? How do we get them training? And he said something to me. He said, we have a factory environment, and it's very automated, high tech. And we really need to hire people. And, these are people who are building buildings, timber frame and panels and that sort of thing. And he said, our best hires, he said, we'll just hire just about everybody if they have a good attitude. We can train them. He said, we're actually better off not hiring a carpenter who learned from his grandfather because they're set in their ways in terms of how we want people to think innovatively who aren't set in the past. And if they have a good attitude, we can train them. And I thought, holy cow, that's kind of a mindset of our industry. Let's not talk about how we can do it in the past. Let's have open minds and get our trade folks involved as well.
That's a refreshing change with regard to having an open mind, and just training and emphasis on training and development, given the serious skill shortage that we have throughout the country, any profession, not just the construction profession, is that if we don't, and there was a discussion, I was there in the panel discussion 2 weeks ago with the Connecticut construction industry, that if we do not engage the high school at the high school level, senior year, and the community college and the industry, particularly with the trades, construction trades, then we will not have success. So the connectivity of regional community colleges, and especially the urban high school, the city high school, to connect at the graduating class, because the suburban high schools are definitely, their standards are usually at better, but not the urban, and they still, urban high schools. So what we need to do as a society to connect all the community colleges, the businesses, contractors, consultants, architects, the DOTs, public agencies, all working together through the focus on the high school and community colleges, because we're not producing the old concept of 4-year degreed engineers from a 4-year is not going to help us, quickly to generate that workforce. And you just mentioned the attitude. If these guys have an attitude and there's somebody to mentor them and train them, they could become effective workforce with 1-year or 2-year crash course on their specific areas and whatnot, and add value to the society, and also good paying jobs that will come out of that one. So I'm excited, as I said, that, and I'd like to, at the end, if you guys have any final thoughts, we're more than happy to talk about it, Christine and or Rod, and I'd like to, if not, then I'll say that thank you for coming to my podcast. And
thank you for having us.
Yes.
No, this has been a great. I'm getting excited just talking here. So I'm all fired up to start my day. So thank you for inviting me. Look forward to future conversations.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, folks. And this brings us to the end of our this podcast. We talked a lot of things, including design build, progressive design build, our community, our society. And if you like it, then please state so in the podcast, and then we'll go from there. Thank you again.
The Bridging Connections podcast is brought to you by AI Engineers.